The great Welsh cultural critic Raymond Williams said over 20 years ago that the moment of any new technology is a moment of choice. By that, he meant there were political and social considerations which could govern the development, utilization, and rollout of new technologies. Raymond Williams did not live to see the introduction of commercial satellite television in the UK, nor the start of the digital era and the explosion of the internet, although he predicted many of the opportunities that new technologies could offer. As I said when I had my own short debate on digital technology almost 5 years ago, he knew that political choices could determine the ways in which new technologies are used. Raymond Williams' thinking perhaps provides something of a framework for us to consider today when we look at the uses of the new technologies and their relationship to democratic renewal. New technologies are often threatening to political establishments. The coming of print technology undermined the monopoly of the monasteries in reproducing books in Latin. Print enabled the spread of alternative religious movements. The production of books in vernacular languages by commercial printers began the process by which modern European nation-states organized themselves around their own printed languages, creating, in Benedict Anderson's phrase, nations of imagined communities. In the 20th century, leaders of revolutions, but also leaders of army coups d'etat, knew that one of the first objectives of the insurrection would be taking over the radio or television station. And the same was true of the democratic revolutions in Eastern and Central Europe in the 1980s. Dictatorships, we know, fear communications technologies. The BBC World Service has long broadcast alternative voices to a wide range of countries around the world. Meanwhile, in the last 24 hours, we have learned that the Chinese government has been forced to back down on its internet filtering software plans. The new technologies can be a force for democracy. Email, blogs, YouTube, and social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, Flickr, and so on have all played their part in spreading the case of the opposition movement in Iran, as we have seen in recent weeks. Coming closer to home, new technologies are being used to generate greater participation in democratic activities and in campaigning. 3 years after I first called for it in my short debate, the National Assembly's Senedd TV went live. Most AMs have websites, a growing number of Assembly members have blogs, some of us have YouTube sites and correspond with constituents via Facebook and Twitter. When we campaigned in the Rhondda in 2006 to keep the Burberry factory open, we set up a website using video and other resources to rally support across the world. In terms of the Assembly, use of the web to place information, find information and participate in consultations has been part of our standard practice since the Assembly's creation. In Wales, more generally, local councils use interactive technologies to allow residents to pay bills, to report fly tipping or other problems. Neathport Talbot Council uses Twitter to inform the electorate about registration and important dates in the electoral process. Twitter has been used in other authorities to inform residents about school closures in bad weather and for planning applications. Councils communicate using YouTube and other forms. Individual councillors may have blogs and Facebook pages. So do local campaigns. Today, via Facebook, I was informed by the Stop the Cow group in Ferndale that their campaign against a particularly unpopular proposal for public art has been successful. Moving on. The new communication technologies sit, of course, alongside existing communication technologies of print media, television, and radio. These are converging technological forms. Some forms of new media, such as blogs, may be argued to be parasitical of older technologies, and their success may often be dependent on their information being subsequently carried in older media forms. Nor should we get too carried away with the importance of new media compared to media forms that have been around for decades. David Plouffe, who masterminded Barack Obama's widely praised presidential campaign on the web, admitted last week that it was old-school technology, including direct mail and TV advertising, that propelled the campaign to victory and not Facebook and Twitter. We should also remember that not everyone has access to the new communication technologies. Older people, people living in poverty, people living in rural areas, are in general less likely to be directly engaged with internet-based services. That is why the Welsh Assembly Government developed the highly respected Communities at One programme under Objective 1, which has funded digital inclusion projects working with a wide variety of groups across Wales and has been seen by the European Commission as an exemplar project in this field. Its successor project under the Convergence Programme, Communities 2.0, with £19.9 million of investment, has been in operation for 3 months. I will be meeting the Wales Cooperative Centre shortly to see how they are delivering on our digital inclusion objectives. I've established a digital inclusion unit within the Department of Social Justice and Local Government to take these issues forward. And we gave extensive evidence on work across the whole of the Assembly Government to the recent House of Commons Welsh Affairs Select Committee inquiry into this subject. Of course, the new technologies are just one way in which we take forward democratic renewal and engagement. Others include, of course, the introduction of school councils in all schools. These are excellent ways for students to experience voting for their representatives and then engaging in discussions about their own lives at school. Mention was made earlier of the role of media snackers in working with teenagers and other young people to develop engagement in projects using new technology. I've met with media snackers myself, and the work they're doing is truly impressive. We also support democratic and renewal and engagement through exercises such as the Black and Minority Ethnic Shadowing Programme operated with Operation Black Vote last year in the Assembly. And the Assembly Government is working with the WLGA and with the Assembly Commission to operate a wider shadowing scheme across local government and the Assembly next year. We're also awaiting the report of the expert panel established by Dr. Gibbons as the Minister for Social Justice and Local Government to consider ways to attract more representative cross-section of people to become involved in local government. We're working with the Electoral Commission to improve participation in democratic processes by disabled people, including people with learning disabilities, by producing materials in understandable formats. And we need to work, of course, also with the Commission and with electoral administrators in the elections planning group to ensure that registration officers reach maximum levels of registration. They have a duty to promote elections. We hope also that local government will be encouraged to participate fully in Local Democracy Week, which has been held in October each year since 1998, which is aimed at getting young people involved with their local council. The week can include mock elections, political debates in school, life swap days where politicians and young people trade places. There's pressure, I think, as has been said earlier, on all of us to renew public faith in our institutions. We cannot rely on the tried and tested methods alone. They will not generate sufficient enthusiasm among many. Therefore, we have to look at using the new technologies in the most creative way that we can, and I'm sure, well, I think there are many ways in which we as a government can do more to improve that ourselves, including, as has already been said, through e-consultations. We know that increasingly younger generations particularly want instant access to information, and a failure to tap into that will result in us being seen as irrelevant. So new technologies are one way of engaging people in the democratic process, but they are not the only means, and we must not give up on other methodologies which have encouraged people to get involved in the past.